As we introduce our next one, which is Tom Davidson. I met Tom probably through a mutual friend of mine when I had a chance to go visit with PBS. PBS, as many of you and myself grew up with them, from Sesame Street and all these wonderful characters, including Reading Rainbow, which interesting as they're seeing the campaign happen there. But Tom is an incredible individual who's in charge and working through PBS's digital studios. He's one of our moderators here at MCON, so I'm excited to bring out Tom Davidson. Hey, Tom.
Good to be here.
Good to see you. Have a seat.
Thank you.
So, Tom, talk to me a little bit about what is PBS Digital Studios?
When you look back at how public television got started 40 years ago, people like Fred Rogers, Joan Gans-Cooney, they were crazy. They were looking at a new maturing medium and saying, we can use this for something different than what the commercial television networks are doing. Yeah. Flash forward 40 years, PBS Digital Studios takes that same attitude. Cheap cameras, you know, the sort of videos you were just talking about with Brad, and says, how do we take these tools, and YouTube is a distribution platform, and use it to tell classic PBS stories? So the result is things like a PBS Idea Channel, Ruminations on Modern Philosophy, or Blank on Blank, great interviews that are annotated and illustrated using animation. It's really giving PBS a way to remind the American people of the value we bring, but doing it in a way that's expressly targeting millennials and people who happen to be younger than our on-air audience.
Interesting. So, because this is a little bit of a shift. Everybody that probably knows about PBS, historically, television, components on the set, really,
That's right.
So now we're dealing with mobile and we're dealing with digital.
That's exactly right. And it's a recognition on the part of Matt Graham, our digital studios leader, and I'm proud to call my colleague and friend, that there's a generation out there now that may watch PBS over the air, but we need to be where they are natively. Whether that means mobile device, Roku's, Xbox, YouTube, we need to be there, and we need to produce PBS quality content, but in a way that's natural to the form and format.
All right. So it's interesting that you mentioned some of those other formats and things, because I've seen PBS Idea Channel, Mike Rignetta's group. And
Mike's fabulous.
So talk about how somebody, because we're going to debut a piece later on from the art assignment, Sarah Green's work. That will be, I think, in either today or tomorrow. We're kind of debuting several things.
They're all blurring together.
Exactly. But so tell us, what are the shows you look for, or the ideas that you say, you know what, that's something we need on the PBS Ideas or digital studio?
It's fascinating. What Matt and his team really look for are, what's a great story?
Yeah.
A great bit of content. That can be something in news and public affairs. Well, how do you tell news on YouTube? Well, you use parody, you use humor, and the result is everything but the news. There's this terrific sort of behind-the-scenes parody look. It's as if Jon Stewart were behind the scenes at NewsHour. We've got one coming up in the fall, working with Hank Green and his group at Pemberley Digital. How do you take the classic PBS costume drama and make it relevant for a YouTube audience? Well, Pemberley Digital has already done that, a riff off Sense and Sensibility called the Lizzie Bennett Diaries. They're working with digital studios to produce a series that'll be premiering this fall called Frankenstein MD. It's Mary Shelley's Frankenstein told in a modern way on YouTube in a series of 5 to 7 minute installments. It's going to be fabulous.
Good.
So what we look for is great stories.
Good. So when we think about PBS, there's some nostalgic stuff that comes back, right? So it's Sesame Street and all those. And it's coming back in a way that this generation is liking that a lot. So talk about that nostalgic piece that you get with PBS.
What you get, I think, with that nostalgia is it's based on memories of how important this institution was in your life, or in my case, my children's lives especially. Living off of nostalgia, though, doesn't necessarily work. Just because my kids all watched Sesame Street growing up doesn't mean that today's 4-year-old is necessarily going to tune to WTTW here in Chicago and watch Sesame Street the same way. Later today, in fact, there's going to be an announcement from PBS about some changes in Sesame Street, keeping the classic 1-hour morning format, but then doing more. You already see Sesame Street doing a lot of digital shorts themselves.
Right.
So what we're trying to do is respect and honor that nostalgia, but also say, no, we're relevant today by being on all these different platforms and by being where the audience wants us to be.
Excellent. So over the course of the next year or so, exciting things that you want to tell our audience about?
Well, my personal favorite is the Frankenstein series. I think you're going to see more great content from Blank on Blank. You know, fabulous unearthed interviews brought back to life and made relevant today. You know, Mike Rignetta is not going to rest on his Webby Award. He's going to continue to crank out new idea channels every week. We're looking at how we take some of those same ideas, extend them to education.
Interesting.
We've got one series out the door, PBS Math Club, already attempting to use the YouTube format to teach math to middle schoolers in an entertaining way. We know from the research, middle school is where algebra trips up students, and there's a strong correlation between that and dropping out. Okay. How can we help that? How can we fix that? We're talking with producers all the time about new ideas. We've got a couple that are in the works, again, looking at the education space. We have something like 1 million subscribers now on YouTube. We're going to make sure that that number continues to grow and continues to reach people with new and relevant content. So there are a lot of exciting things going on.
Yeah, because I even know, like on Idea Channel and other places, you get a lot of, Mike gets a lot of views. I mean, it's been, so how do, you know, when that first started, you had to say there, wow, I think we're onto something.
Yeah, and I think that the entire team has learned from the failures as much as the wins. Mike's series is fabulous. There have been some others where it's like, okay, wow, well, we didn't have the right social component there. We weren't reaching out to the audience in the right way. Or that host just wasn't engaging in a conversation with the audience. They were acting like a classic television host. It's been a fabulous learning opportunity. We see some of it actually tripping back and informing some of the decisions our on-air colleagues are making. It's been a fun ride.
Good. Well, I'm excited you're here, moderating one of our sections here. So we'll see you later.
Yes.
Not now, but thank you so much.
It's great to be here.
Appreciate it.